Welcome to our webinar, An Introduction to PSAC for the Academic Sector. You may be a former or current university sector worker, or maybe you're just here for information. And either way, we're really glad that you're here tonight. But before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on. We have members joining us from across Turtle Island, and it's important to recognize the traditional territory and land in which each one of us lives, works, and plays. So for myself and Marianne and Caroline and Ganesh, we're joining you from Treaty 1, which is the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. For everyone else on this webinar, I invite you all to take a moment to consider your own relationship with the land and the relationship with Indigenous peoples whose territories we are visitors on. I'm Tina Matthias Bouchard. I'm a regional representative out of the Winnipeg Regional Office. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce the other faces that you see on your screen tonight. My co-facilitator for tonight is Jesse Todd. He's the regional representative out of the Saskatoon office. And we also have joining us our regional education officer, which is Caroline Klug, who is out of the Winnipeg office. And we have your elected representative, which is Marianne Ledoux, which is your regional executive vice president. And your speakers for tonight, we have Dr. Joanne Earnest, who is from PSAC Local 40004 at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon. We have Ganesh Taylor, who's from Local 55600 at the University of Winnipeg. We have Craig Bergold, who is from Local 901 at Queen's in Kingston. So thanks to everyone for being here tonight. I would like to now take you to our agenda. So tonight we're going to start off with some opening comments that Marianne will start us off with. Then we're going to go into an introduction to PSAC, who we are, what we do, who we represent. We're also going to be talking about some key concerns in the academic sector. And some bargaining gains that have happened within this sector over the years that PSAC has been involved in the academic sector. Interspersed through that, we are also going to start with our speakers who will be talking about their experiences in being unionized and the benefits that they've experienced through that. And then we're going to have a question and answer and followed up by some closing comments by Marianne. I just wanted to highlight that at any time, if you want to ask a question of anyone, you can put that into the question box, or I'm going to also suggest the chat box for myself. There's been a few issues tonight, so I don't actually have access to some of the things that are on the screen, and I'm hoping that Jesse or Caroline have access to that. Caroline will be moderating the questions tonight. So if you do have a question for a particular presenter, please identify that into the box. Otherwise, they will be for the panelists. And last, before I kick it over to Marianne, at the end of the presentation is a screen that has helpful links. And you don't have to write them down. Everyone who attended tonight will be receiving an automatic email with all those links embedded in it already. And so that's about it. One final comment is tonight's presentation is being recorded. I did hear from a number of members, particularly at the universities in Manitoba, who had responded saying that they were unable to be present for tonight's webinar, and so they're looking forward to the recording. So if you see that it is being recorded, that is one of the reasons why. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Marianne now to start us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina, and welcome to everyone for joining us tonight. So this is actually, oh man, I tell you, that picture, we've been in code red, so my hairstylist, my hair appointment is canceled, so apologies, I don't look like that right now. Sorry, I had to go there. It was around 2000, the year 2000, when we recognized that the majority of our members were federal government employees. So that's our history as a union, is representing workers that are primarily with the federal government. One thing that as a union, one of our core principles is that, you know, if we're fighting for something for ourselves, it's because every worker deserves this. And so there was a real movement in the early 2000s to look at organizing, um, and looking at sectors where workers are suffering abuses, where workers don't have a voice, where workers are being intimidated and harassed, there's no equality, and how can we as a union, be able to provide that support? And so one of the sectors that we identified at that time was the academic sector. So traditionally, university faculty is represented by an association. A lot of the administrative and the support services are represented by unions like CUPE. But what we noticed was the um, other employees that really are the heart of a university. So whether you're a TA or a marker or an RA or any of the numerous titles, that you are a worker that's contributing to the success of that institution, and you deserve to be treated like a worker. You deserve to know, to have fair wages, to have fair hours, to have accountability and transparency in your staffing processes, and to really have that recourse and that support that you need. And so, we had a huge push, and the academic sector was really a target for our initial organizing. We had unbelievable success in Ontario and Quebec, kind of were at the forefront of this. And you'll hear from Craig later. And so, here in the prairies, some of our institutions are a little smaller. Um, we started off, the first unit that we had was Brandon University, and which was, a smaller unit, kind of contained. And then we moved on to the University of Winnipeg and organized a few units there. And then just a few years ago, at the request of workers at the University of Saskatchewan, we initiated an organizing drive at the U of S and were successful and now represent upwards of 1,500 members at the University of Saskatchewan. You may be wondering why we don't represent anyone in Alberta in the academic sector, and that's because the legislation provincially does not allow those workers to currently organize. However, the previous provincial government did introduce legislation to allow that to happen. And so, we are looking to see if we can support workers, academic workers in the academic sector in Alberta. So, hey, anybody has any contacts out there, by all means, drop us a line and let us know. Because the one thing that we know is that you deserve to be able to be paid for the work that you do, to be recognized for your contributions to the institution, while you're also continuing with your own studies. We're there to represent workers that have never had a voice, and it's something that really has been a priority. So a bit of a learning curve for me, getting to know members in the academic sector. So I just want to say welcome to everyone. And if you are a member in the prairies, welcome. And I look forward to hearing the other presentations. Thanks.
Thank you, Marianne. So I'm going to turn it over to Jesse now, who's going to bring a little interaction in, and we're going to start with a poll.
Okay, so for tonight, we want to know where everyone is coming from. So not specifically where you're located, but we'd like to know where is the institution where you're currently working or studying. Because we know in COVID times, we are not always physically located where we are studying or working. So can you please enter your location to the poll? Almost there. I'll just give it another few more seconds here. Okay. So as you can see, we have mostly members from Saskatchewan. We do have a few from Manitoba. We have one from Ontario and one from PEI or New Brunswick. So this is only a small sampling of where our membership is from, and I know Tina's going to get a little bit more detail as far as who we represent. Before we get into that, just so we get a sense of who our audience is, I'm just going to ask one more poll question. So we'd like to know which position do you currently hold at your university? Are you a postdoctoral fellow? Are you a graduate student worker, a teaching assistant, research assistant, student assistants? We also have research associates, research scientists, research professionals, and we have other, oh, and sorry, the tutors and markers as well. All right, I think that is everyone. So, yeah, as you can see, we have mostly the group of the research associates. I know I see a bunch of names in the attendees list. I recognize some names from the University of Saskatchewan. So Joanne's been recruiting her colleagues. But no, it's good to see we have a broad distribution of people from all different areas of the post-secondary sector. So that's fantastic. And hopefully, as we continue with these types of webinars throughout the next year, we'll be able to see a nice variety of members attending. So with that, I will turn it back over to Tina.
All right, thanks, Jesse. So let's talk about who we are and what do we do and who do we represent. So PSAC is a large national union formed in 1966 that represents workers in every sector across Canada. We have over 200,000 members and we're the fifth largest union in Canada. So your union works tirelessly organizing all the time, and especially in the post-secondary sector. And because of that, we have more than 27,000 members in the academic sector. So that represents 13.5% of PSAC's overall membership. That's a large amount. For some of you on the call tonight, you may not even have known that you were unionized, and that happens. You may have taken a job with the university and thought, nothing more about it. And this is why we want to cover some of the basics in this webinar before, we get into the speakers tonight. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, who is PSAC? And actually, PSAC is you. Other than a small number of staff, your union is a democratic organization governed by elected members. And so the union is structured under the premise that members will actively engage from the grassroots local level in making their workplaces better. So PSAC supports active participation and supports members' needs. And so we want you to be involved. It's your union. And we encourage participation from everyone and every equity group. And it's that diversity that makes us strong. And so when I say that PSAC wants you to be involved, in fact, when I look at who's on the call tonight and for staff-wise, so myself, Caroline, Jesse, we all came from PSAC membership and we were all involved in our local level. Marianne is your elected official. She had also started out at the local level and has taken the route of running for office at a regional level, which finds herself in this role that she's been in for several years. So just wanted to give you sort of a little bit of background about that. the union talks about the strength that it gets from its gains, and these are often called a union advantage. And these gains have resulted in rights for workers across Canada, whether they are unionized or not. So when members fight for rights, such as maternity and paternity leave provisions, same-sex spousal recognition, right, health and safety rights, just to name a few, um, these gains have made their way into employment codes across Canada and became a floor of rights for every worker. And so what this is really important to remember, that because of the strength that we have in our membership, these are the benefits that this strength can create. So I would like you to keep that in mind as we look ahead to what PSAC does for you. And when we talk about the gains that our bargaining units have made, especially in the academic sector, it's important to remember that these gains came from you and from the membership. So again, what do we do? And so what does PSAC offer? So there's a number of items here that we're going to talk about. Jesse and I'll take the first half and Jesse will talk about the second half. But first I want to talk about bargaining. So as Marianne mentioned about organizing workers in this particular sector, these could be first-time units that have been certified by labor boards, and then in turn, PSAC works with the membership to bargain a first collective agreement. And in units that are already established, then we work with the members to negotiate improvements to those collective agreements already. So, in particular, each of the bargaining units in the union have a collective agreement unless they're brand new and working towards that first agreement. So when we talk about a collective agreement, for those who are not sure, this is a legally binding document between your union and your employer. So it is members who have been elected to the bargaining team who sit with a negotiator, a staff member from PSAC. They take the demands which are important to the membership and they negotiate with the employer to create this document. So if you haven't ever looked at this collective agreement, please do so. On the psacunion.ca website, there is a listing of all of the collective agreements. So you can find your bargaining unit, you can drill down, and you will be able to find a copy of that collective agreement. And so I highly encourage you to take a moment to read it, because if you haven't before, you might be surprised that there are some things, some benefits and entitlements that you may not have been aware of. And so maybe it's leave you didn't know about, or maybe it's paid training that you didn't know about. But these are all important items that have been negotiated on your behalf. And so it's really important to know how, that agreement that governs the terms and conditions of your work. And not only that, but it all has important language, which Jesse will talk about in a bit, about what happens when the employer violates that collective agreement and what recourse you have about that. So the next item is education. So the union offers education and training. And so prior to this pandemic, we actually had in-person training or education. I'm like, what? I can't even believe that we met with people face to face. But the pandemic has created this, working out of our homes, and we're looking in 2021 to bring you education on this type of platform. We also will have bringing back sort of some self-directed learning. And there's also these informal learning opportunities that the union offers through committees, conferences, and conventions. So I may say this a couple of times tonight, but please, I encourage you, if you don't currently get email notifications or you don't follow us on social media, please do, because there are opportunities that you might be missing out. And in particular, education with PSAC is free. So, and there are multiple topics and multiple things that are really important to you. And I know Caroline, as our education officer, might be able to speak to this a little bit better than I am right now, but there are multiple topics that the union covers. Also, we've improved employment equity. So we've been at the forefront of challenging employers and ensuring that members of historically disadvantaged groups are not discriminated against due to artificial barriers in the workplace. And so, if you're not aware, historically disadvantaged are Indigenous peoples, women, racialized peoples, and persons with disabilities. Artificial barriers, if you're not familiar, could be due to racism, discrimination, bias, stereotypes, assumptions, or systems. And I could go on about this, but at any time, if you were to Google information on, a topic, let's say on PSAC, there's multiple documents and handbooks and really helpful toolkits online. And one of them is the Employment Equity Toolkit, and it speaks to more about this. And it also has key dates in history that PSAC has been part of in order to um, losing my words here, for employment equity. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to let Jesse jump in now for the other pieces of what we do for you.
Thanks, Tina. So the next piece is grievance and arbitration. So in case you weren't aware, we do have the right to grieve certain issues that arise in the workplace that are a violation of the collective agreement. Sometimes these are situations where management is not always acting, in everyone's best interest. But quite often there's times as well where we have a disagreement in the interpretation of the collective agreement. So if we can't agree on the language, sometimes we have to file a grievance so we can find out, what the proper interpretation is. And if we don't have the ability to come to some sort of resolution through the formal grievance process with the employer, we can always take it to the final level through arbitration, where we would have a independent third-party arbitrator hear the both sides, and then they would come to a decision based on the evidence presented. So it's a process, it's a tool available to us. We try to resolve things informally, but sometimes it's just we're not able to do so. And I think that's one thing in the post-secondary sector that we experience, is that there's a kind of a power imbalance within that group. We have, excuse me, we have members where they may find themselves in a situation where their employment supervisor is also their academic supervisor, and sometimes people are a little bit leery about filing a grievance in order to to get some clarification. But really, I think a lot of it has to do with the approach. And we can always find the approach to best serve our members in order to get to resolve any sort of issues within the workplace. The next thing is health and safety. Of course, each province has their own health and safety legislation, but we do provide language within our collective agreements that outline specific things that pertain to health and safety, highlighting things like the employer's responsibility to ensure that everyone has a healthy and safe workplace. But we also have members that sit on health and safety committees within their workplace. Depending on how your local is set up, you may have a number of people that sit on the different committees that are each department, as well as a committee that's actually oversees the entire university. It's a little bit different for every institution you go to. But it's important that we have our members there and involved, and they're actually, bringing issues to the forefront, especially now. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and there's a lot of health and safety issues as people do return to campus in some sort of capacity. But also, people may be working from home for the first time. Where they are not quite set up for a home office, or they may not have the proper layout. So it's important to bring those issues to the employer as well, so that we can make sure our members are able to work in a safe environment. And actually, Joanne, who we'll be hearing from shortly, she's actually the health and safety rep, at the University of Saskatchewan. So the next topic is the political action, lobbying, and mobilization. This is kind of something that's more near and dear to my heart. I love political action. I like lobbying and getting in members of Parliament's face and making them nervous, make them sweat a little bit. But we do, as a member, I was involved in a number of different ways for political action. Actually, my first time as a staff member of PSAC. I was a political action assistant during the 2015 election, where I got to set up different candidate forums and stuff like that. And it was really kind of fun being able to engage the members on a variety of different topics. But we do provide a lot of opportunities for members to get involved, whether it's letter writing campaigns, lobbying members of parliament, you're a member of the legislature. This can be done, at the local level, also through area councils, as well as, as a university sector as well. There may be a common issue across, maybe across the prairies. It could be across the country. And there is actually something coming out not too distant future where there'll be more opportunities to get involved with this type of thing as far as issues that are specific to the university sector. There's things like the Canadian Labour Congress has their lobby days where we send members to Ottawa to sit down with members of parliament and lobby on a variety of issues that are common to the labour movement. One time I was there, I recall we talked about employment equity. We discussed pharmacare and stuff like that. So these are things that affect everyone. Things like affordable childcare and those types of topics. We've had very effective letter writing campaigns in the past. We wrote to MPs where there was a closure of the federal office in Vegreville, Alberta, where we were able to put the pressure on the government to reverse their decision. Also, we've actually with PSAC at the University of Saskatchewan, we actually did have an issue where the university was going to be increasing tuition quite drastically over a 5-year period. I think they're looking at 10% per year for 5 years. Our graduate students, of course, were not very impressed by this move. So PSAC was poised to assist the Graduate Students Association to launch a campaign to fight against these cuts, or sorry, these tuition increases. We didn't get to see that come to fruition because I think a week before we were going to have our big rally and things were going to kick off. Pandemic hit and everything shut down. So if they do bring this to the table again, we'll be ready to take this on. And also, like Marianne herself joined on behalf of PSAC with a number of other post-secondary organizations across Manitoba that campaigned against education cuts, where the Pallister government wanted to roll back funding to universities by 30%. So this is something that's PSAC is always involved with. We see an issue that's being created by decisions that are being made by politicians, so we go right to the source. So we always love it when members want to get involved and want to write those letters, have those meetings with MPs, and effect change. And also there is a campaign that's kicking off tomorrow, and I believe Tina is going to show the link to register later on. But basically it's Education for All. So it's a campaign for more affordable, accessible, and high quality publicly funded post-secondary education in Canada. We don't have a lot of details on this, but there's a panel discussion happening tomorrow at, I believe it's at noon Central Standard Time. But Tina will be sharing that link with you later on, so you could register if you're interested in that. Last but not least, PSAC has always been at the forefront of working to improve women's rights and human rights. We've used grievances, human rights complaints, and referrals to courts, including the Supreme Court of Canada, to ensure that employers are living up to their obligations. In particular, PSAC has lobbied and mobilized around employment equity, pay equity, national child care. We also push for additional clauses within collective agreements that further human rights goals, as well as continuing to lobby and strengthen human rights acts. I'm thinking of a specific example at the University of Saskatchewan for the graduate students. We were just able to add some language to the collective agreement during bargaining that allowed PSAC to partner with the University of Saskatchewan on employment equity issues. So it's more of an information sharing kind of relationship where we're both working towards a common goal, and not them kind of holding the cards close to their chest and not sharing any information with us. So it's kind of like small steps as we move forward on some of these fronts. We don't get what we want right away, but we're slowly chipping away at that and getting some putting our members in a better position. So all these different things that we've listed here on this slide, the different things that PSAC offers for you. But also, if you have signed a membership card, you also get access to free education workshops, as well as you can apply for different scholarships. You can attend conferences and conventions. You can run for elections in your local executive committees. Like the Prairies, or the Prairie Regional Council. Ontario has their regional council as well, and each region has their own that you could run for positions there. If you have not received a card yet, we have a link at the end of the webinar. You just follow that link and you would be able to fill out a card and become a full-fledged member and obtain all those wonderful benefits. And just before I end here, actually, under the human rights umbrella, we actually, with PSAC, we do have the Social Justice Fund. So this is something that PSAC dedicates money to on an annual basis. We fund a number of different projects to further different human rights or social justice type of activities our members are involved in across the country. So this is a fantastic way to demonstrate, PSAC giving back to the community and really strengthening the community, the places that our members work and live. So with that, I have reached the end of my speaking notes, so I'll hand it back over to Tina.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to have our first speaker for tonight. So I just want to do a little bit of an introduction. This is Dr. Joanne Earnest. Joanne grew up in a rural farming region of New South Wales, Australia. She has a Bachelor of Science in Molecular Biology at La Trobe University from 2015. Her research interests include plant cell biology, systems biology, and proteomics. Joanne first joined the GIFS team in 2016 to investigate plant reproductive biology and is now developing her own research program investigating seed proteins in crop species. She recently received a grant for this work from the Ministry of Saskatchewan's Agricultural Development Fund. Joanne proudly served her local as president from 2019 to 2020 and participated in the first contract negotiations for the University of Saskatchewan postdoctoral researchers. She is currently the local's chief steward and is part of the negotiating team for the newly certified professional research associates. So I will stop sharing my screen, Joanne, and let you take over.
Thanks, Tina. Right, I hope you can see my PowerPoint slide. Thanks, Ganesh. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Tina, for the introduction. So as Tina said, I'm a research associate at the University of Saskatchewan. I was the president of Local 40,004 up until our AGM last year when I stepped down, and now I am the chief steward for our local. I'm also on the Research Associates new bargaining team. So we are about to start bargaining with the employer next month. And as Jesse said, I am your OH&S representative at the university, which this year has been dominated by this virus. So that's been exciting, but I'm looking forward to changes to the way we work in the coming months and years. All right, I'm going to tell you a story called What Happened When the University of Saskatchewan Workers Joined PSAC. It's actually really just a story about the unionization of postdocs and kind of the incredible change that we brought about through that work, and hopefully inspire you to get engaged with your locals and see if you can make similar magic happen. Awesome. Okay, so a little bit of background. Marianne mentioned this, but we are the Local 40,004. We are currently in the process of talking about making some changes to our title now that we have some new members who are not reflected in our name. So that's underway. We need to make some changes to our bylaws to reflect that. But back in 2015, we were just the graduate student workers at USAF. So that's the teaching assistants, research assistants, and student assistants at USAF. They were the ones who got the ball rolling. And in fact, those graduate student workers have just ratified their second collective agreement. So that's really exciting. In 2016, the postdocs certified to join as under a separate collective agreement. So not the same collective agreement as the graduate student workers, but under their own collective agreement. And we signed our first collective agreement in January of 2019, which I guess is what, now 2 years ago, but it seems like it was yesterday. And then since then, we've been joined by the residents at the College of VetMed, and obviously our professional research associates and research scientists, professional associates. And for those groups, for the professional research associates, our negotiations are underway, and the VetMed residents, we are moving on their negotiation. And so this is really what our membership looks like now. So the vast majority of us are still graduate student workers. They make up the vast bulk of our membership. Then a smaller proportion are postdoctoral fellows, an even smaller proportion are research associates, and a tiny number are VetMed residents. I've thrown these up here if you want to check us out, you're welcome to. That's both for our members who might not have this information, and obviously for everybody else who's listening. All right, so this is my little case study for you. This is negotiating the postdoc at Is Psac's first collective agreement. So in 2016, this was the status of postdocs. We weren't considered employees, we were considered trainees. And I just did a quick Google. Apparently there are still like 20 institutions across Canada where this is still the case, where postdocs are not considered employees. They're considered trainees or even students in some cases. And it is still not it's not federally legislated that postdocs be employees. We pay tax, but we're not federally considered employees. And that includes if you are Tri-Council funded or independently funded, Canada-wide, you're not considered an employee. And this is really problematic because it means you often can't access employee facilities and resources, like, for example, the Employee Family Assistance Program. But it also means you can't get a bank loan because you're not employed. So this was really challenging at the time. It also meant, this is the biggest one, that we couldn't contribute to EI or CPP. So this was a huge issue for most postdocs. We were recommended that we got 3 weeks of annual vacation. This was policy, but not guaranteed. There was no regulations on overtime, so postdocs could work upwards of 60, 80 hours a week with no additional compensation. We had no parental leave. We didn't have any kind of extended health benefits. And of course, we didn't have access to the employee assistance program. And I point this one out because every time after time, every survey or poll that we did of our members, mental health challenges came up. And the fact that we didn't have access to this incredibly valuable and important mental health assistance program was a real problem to us. This was another big one. Our minimum salary was $35,000 a year. And Canada-wide, this still remains a challenge that postdocs are underpaid. Until in 2017, when we started bargaining. So it took about 18 months to go from our first meetings with our negotiator to finally having our contract arbitrated. So I'm going to tell you how we got there. I'm going to throw up a few photos because we worked really hard to get engagement from our membership. That was absolutely key. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how we did that. I came past my office one day and I found this, and I didn't know it was going to be there, and it really warmed my heart. So, you know, we had lots of love from the other postdocs around us. Generated a hashtag. We put it all over Twitter. We had some barbecue membership engagement things. This is just one example. I'm standing back here waving a flag like it's a burning bra. But this was great fun. This was a really great way to get engagement from our members. And of course, we did it right in the bowl, directly in front of the university admin building. We also started a YouTube channel as a way to communicate, because of course not everyone wants to read long emails, but maybe we'll watch a 4-minute video. So we used a couple of alternative ways to communicate with our members. And we engaged the community, and this was really important, I think. So 2 big pieces. The Saskatoon Star Phoenix we reached out to, and Alex wrote an article about what was happening and what the situation was for postdocs and why we were heading into mediation and eventually into arbitration. And then at the same time, we ran a petition. We actually got nearly 300 signatures on this petition, which is amazing given that at that stage there were only about 200 postdocs at the university. So we certainly had some support from outside the membership who were happy to sign this petition. A young Jessie and some other faces that you might recognize. We did this several times as a way to generate some interest. I actually think this is a, I can't remember the details of these, but the point I wanted to make here is just how much support we had from the PSAC local office and regional office in terms of resources and time and effort and assistance. And of course, eventually, we did have to go to arbitration. There were a number of items that we couldn't agree on, and so we brought in an arbitrator. And at that point, comparators became really, really important. And so I want to shout out all these other fantastic postdoc unions and postdoctoral collective agreements that had gone before us, because they really paved the way for most of the things that we were asking for. So of course, Dalhousie, there was a lot of PSAC postdoctoral groups, the postdocs at Carleton, the postdocs at UOIT, at Laval, and of course at Queen's Uni. And then there was QP 3902 at University of Toronto. So these guys, everything that they achieved was a stepping stone for us. It was very much if I've seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants kind of moment. So as of 2019, this is some of the awesome changes that we brought about. So we were reclassified as employees with full staff opportunities. So now we contribute to EI and CPP. We have access to the Employee Family Assistance Program. We can access any facility as an employee. There was a time when we couldn't make a room booking. I had to ask my master's student husband to book rooms for me because as a postdoc, I didn't have the right to book a room on campus. And this has been a really big one, and I guess not unanticipated, but just something I hadn't really considered was the way the attitudes towards the quality and importance of postdocs at the university has started to shift. And I think that's one of the most important changes that we're starting to see. We got 4 weeks annual vacation and a benefits package that was not quite as awesome as some of the other staff at the university, but better than what they initially came to the table with. So we were really proud of that. We got provisions for overtime. We got some sick leave. We got 15 weeks of parental leave top up. So we went from not even being able to participate in maternity and parental leave from EI because we weren't paying into EI to having 15 weeks parental leave top up, which at the time was relevant to me because I was 5 months pregnant. So I cried when we signed this one. This was a big deal, and it was quite amazing when we looked back at what we had achieved. This was really exciting. And small improvements to our salaries, not enormous, but slightly moving in the right direction. And those postdocs are now in their second contract negotiations. So they've been joined by the research associates, and some of their major items I've listed here. Nothing unsurprising, and I'm sure Craig and Ganesh are going to talk about some of these too. So I guess if I can just leave you with these messages, remember that I went in thinking it would be about what was fair, but it's not. It's about leveraging the power that you have together. And you might not get everything that you want the first time, but you are guaranteed a next time and a next time and a next time forever. And even if the gains you make are incremental, you're still moving in the right direction. And I just was struck by this. When's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second time to plant a tree? Today. So that's where I'm going to leave you all. Thanks, guys.
Thank
I
you
better
so
stop.
much, Joanne. That was excellent.
I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Thanks, guys.
So it's Jesse, it's up to you now. I'm just going to share my screen again and bring that presentation back up.
Thank you. And also, I just wanted to add to Joanne's comments there, because the postdocs weren't considered employees before, they weren't being paid a wage, so they were not covered under health and safety legislation, which is a huge factor. So you get hurt doing your job as a trainee and being paid a stipend. You're not covered the way anyone else is on campus. So being classified as an employee now makes a huge difference. So, we covered a lot of information at the beginning about, the different areas that we represent across the country. Also, but we want to focus in a little bit more on, what kinds of positions do we represent in the academic sector. A lot of teaching assistants make up, a large percentage of our membership, especially at, the University of Saskatchewan, University of Winnipeg, I believe, as well. So we also have, the research assistants, and the student assistants that all fit within the graduate students umbrella. We also have the research associates. What am I missing here? Residence assistants, 4 fellows, vigilators, administrators, markers, tutors, lab demonstrators. And I know that some people have checked the other box when we did the first poll. You can always throw it in the chat box if you like, what your position is on campus if we haven't covered it yet, because it is quite a wide variety of positions.
Thanks, Jesse. So I think it's really important to talk about like what Jesse covered about, because there is an extensive list. So it's easy to think that when you're in your own particular unit that's all that exists. But it isn't, considering that 27,000 plus members. There are a number of job titles in that grouping for sure. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the academic sector concerns. In 2019, PSAC did something it had never done before, and in it brought together representatives from each of the 61 bargaining units in the sector to Ottawa. So members could talk about concerns with each other and also raise those concerns to PSAC leadership, which hadn't been done before. And highlight these key issues that are the greatest importance to them. So out of that discussion, this isn't all of them, but this is a sampling. Out of that discussion came wages and job security, student loans, unpaid internships, childcare, research funding, whistleblowing protection, membership engagement, intellectual property, and human rights protections. Now, I think it has been mentioned, I think Marianne spoke about it before, but the academic sector is precarious, right? And so I know that Jesse had touched on about the campaign that's happening, Education for All, and one of the key issues is the precarity in the sector. So when we look at the membership of PSAC as a whole, this sector with its precarity is quite different from the other workers that we represent who have full-time jobs, right? So it doesn't mean though that because of the high turnover in this sector that the issues don't remain the same. I mean, yes, new issues can come in that are, a particular interest to that particular bargaining unit, but because of the academic sector as a whole, there are issues that are affecting all the bargaining units. We talk about research funding, we talk about student loans, that can be something that is across the sector in total. So these concerns keep on going. So it's important that PSAC knows about these issues so we can mobilize the membership and we can create campaigns for it as well, and then turn helps with bargaining. And so moving into bargaining itself, what is important to one unit may not necessarily be important to another unit. But that being said, PSAC, the negotiation unit, does keep a list of the key articles. So a detailed list of these key articles of gains for members in particular bargaining units. So Joanne had spoke about comparators, and this is where this staff negotiator that is sitting with the members at that bargaining table can then draw that information. The university employers, they love to say that they don't have any money and they can't agree to that particular proposal because other universities aren't doing it. But then in turn, because PSAC has kept these detailed records, the negotiator can say, as Joanne mentioned, that these are the comparators, these are the other universities that have this, and it bolsters the union's position at the bargaining table. So some of these priorities, as I mentioned, may not be the same for every bargaining unit because, as I mentioned earlier, demands, the bargaining demands that bargaining units come forward with are important to the members, are prioritized, and again, they may not be the same with every unit. But so these are some of the key articles which were important to those members at the bargaining table, which resulted in these gains. So we have like bereavement leave, professional development, pension and benefits, progressive discipline, hours of work, meal allowance, tuition waivers, paid training, health and safety, lump sum payments, overtime, paid sick leave, discrimination harassment clauses, maternity, paternity leaves, which Joanne spoke about, wage parity, things like office space or taxi reimbursement, union security, intellectual property, vacation pay, seniority, meal allowances, and domestic violence leave. Now, I know you might be like, wow, how do I get a list of all that? And I really want to see how that happens. Again, as I mentioned before, all the collective agreements are on psacunion.ca. You can go in and see what other bargaining units have in their collective agreement and can compare it to your own. And this can be something that, maybe then that would be an interest for you to sit on your next bargaining team or put your name forward for election for a role or to be on the bargaining committee itself. So I'm just going to leave this with the gains here because I know that we still have Ganesh and Craig who are going to speak from their own experiences. And I know that there are some highlights there. So I don't want to go too much further, but I just want to highlight that what Jesse and I have spoken about tonight is just a small snippet and the very, very basics. And I hope that you will reach out to your local executive or your regional office and to find out more information, perhaps take some training, as I mentioned earlier. The union is only as strong as you. And so it's really important for members to be informed about issues, understand your rights under the collective agreement, and not just your entitlements, but also where to go if you have, you think something might not be right, you need some help or just want to ask a question. So as I mentioned before, there's an opportunity to get involved at every level. It's a democratic organization and we really, really need you involved. So if your unit is bargaining, those at the bargaining table are only as strong as the membership behind them. So if there is a campaign throughout your local that to support that bargaining team, whether or not if you see in the picture where the individuals holding hands are wearing a bracelet, which we do have those bracelets, and it says I support my bargaining team, or it's a PSAC branded water bottle that I know some of our locals have done in the past. It's something as small as that, or it's participating in larger campaigns that I know that, in particular, Craig will be speaking about. So there's a place for everyone, whether or not it's you read the information, stay informed, or whether or not you want to take a larger role on and so some social justice piece as well. So that being said, I am going to turn it over to Jesse to introduce our second speaker for tonight.
Thanks, Tina. It's my pleasure to introduce Ganesh Taylor. He is coming to us from PSAC Local 55600 from the University of Winnipeg. Ganesh is a graduate student and teaching assistant at the University of Manitoba. Sorry, I think we had this. Was it University of Winnipeg or University of Manitoba?
Both. You're good.
Both? Oh, okay. Man of many talents. Ganesh Taylor is a graduate student and teaching assistant at the University of Manitoba, where he also serves as counselor for the Graduate Students Association. He's been working as a lab instructor and research assistant at the University of Winnipeg for 3 years and served on the bargaining team during negotiations in 2019 during the ratification of the first research associate and research assistant collective agreement. Ganesh has first-hand experience in confronting employers, administrators, and other authoritative figures in university environments. I like it. His work in unions has afforded him a better understanding of student worker struggles, issues, and grievances experienced during work periods. Ganesh continues to fight for stronger protections, equitable pay, safety, and an altogether egalitarian society. Thanks for joining us, Ganesh.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. So like Jesse said, I'm a bargaining committee member from PSAC Local 55600, signatory on the first collective agreement. And yeah, I've seen firsthand how university administration thinks and what their priorities are. And of course, it's no surprise that the well-being of the worker, the people that are watching this right now, likely, your well-being is very low on that list to the university administration. You could probably guess what is high on that list, profit and public image. So I'm here to talk about precarious work, though, and I wanted to start by just explaining what it is. So precarious work is work conditions that are insecure. Usually some identifying factors for that are on the posting, it'll say something like temporary or casual or term, if there is a posting at all. And they also fail to provide adequate wages. So you heard with Joanne earlier that there was a low wage offered before, and then the unions fought for an increase in wage. And I'm sure Craig will have something to talk about in that respect as well. These people that are working as precarious workers might be teaching assistants, research assistants, lab demonstrators, and et cetera. Some things like graders and markers as well, tutors. And the problem with precarious work is that you're constantly unsure if you'll have a job in the next term or the next week, even sometimes. This fosters financial anxiety from everyone that's working in this field. You know, if you're not sure whether you're going to have a paycheck in 2 weeks' time, yet you are currently working and putting your all into this, how are you able to feed yourself or pay rent or pay your phone bill or even save, which is something that's more and more difficult to do as a student for sure. I know a lot of people as students are not having the ability to save right now because a lot of their income is going straight to the bare necessities. And of course, the thing to top this off is that the work that you do requires a high level of education. This isn't, just any job, not to say that any job doesn't require great pay. Every job does. But you have put in a lot of work to bring yourself up to an education that can justify something that's or that justifies getting paid much more than what research assistants and other precarious workers are being paid right now who are ununionized. You deserve a paid fair wage. You absolutely deserve one because you are a worker who should be respected for the work that they do. And unions can help in those tense situations that might arise between a worker and an employer. If you don't have a union, there might be a situation where you want to ask your employer for a raise or benefits or time off or expressing concern about work conditions, including harassment. And those things might work out. You might have it go where it turns out in your favor, and they might be sympathetic towards your causes. But, this is a big one here, they're not obligated to care. And to top it off, you don't have much or any leverage in that situation. Without a union, this person who's, your boss or your supervisor, this person holds the extraordinary power to completely dismiss your concerns without a second thought and without a consequence. Being part of a union, you can become empowered through solidarity with fellow workers who want the same things that you do. The union has representatives who have your interests in mind. The union puts the weight of the entire workforce on the employer, giving leverage to the workers to demand what they are owed. This could include things that Tina had mentioned, appropriate raises, benefits, and other rights that are for everyone collectively. And they'll communicate with you your rights as they've been won through collective bargaining and help you decide on a path forward if you have any grievances. You're not going to just kind of be left on your own to deal with it. They'll work on your behalf to settle disputes between you and the employer, either informally or in a formal process like arbitration, just to make sure that you're not in that position alone. You're not thinking that I'm by myself here, I can't do anything. You'll have the union behind you, working every day to make sure that you come out with a job and with what you are completely owed. And the thing about union workers is that they work the exact same job as you. The people that are on the union with you, they work the same job as you. They know what makes for the struggles that you all face in your specific job. This isn't just a general kind of sweeping thing that everyone kind of gets treated the exact same way per every union. It's more about equity in terms of what is this union and who makes it up and what they specifically need based on what the struggles that they're having are. So in that way, your union is your colleague, your coworker. They work beside you and for your collective interest. And again, like I said, our work is important. It's valuable, so are we, and many of us love our work, but find ourselves unable to make ends meet with a job in academics that may go away at any time, sometimes without warning. During bargaining in 2017, I can't remember when that happened. During bargaining, we heard many workers voice concerns about positions which would near their end date, get very close to it. And they were asking their, usually their principal investigators or someone else higher up, whether the position would be extended. And sometimes they didn't hear a response right up until a week or even days before their end date. And these workers had, of course, legitimate concerns. They wanted to know whether it was time to start looking for a new job or accepting a new job, because they had bills to pay just like everyone else. Yet in universities, it's common to see work disappear in a new term with no warning, or be given to a student without a posting for the position ever appearing. You may have experienced this, where a job that you've been doing for a few years suddenly goes to someone else without you ever hearing that the job was up for grabs. And sometimes it can go the other way, where you're asked to work beyond the dates you were hired. So you might not get a job, or you might have a job that makes you continue working beyond when you should have been done working. This, of course, gets into your kind of sense of value. Like, are you a person that has their own life, or are you just a person that they can use to work? And I have a short story about when I was doing non-unionized work at the University of Winnipeg, and I had a disagreement with some of the administrators there. So I was working as a lab instructor, and as one, I was asked to work beyond my contract date. I was told that this was normal practice and that other lab instructors were obliging by this request. I was told that I would not be compensated for my extra work. And when I explained I would no longer be an employee on the days that they wanted me to work, they said, just do it anyway and not cause trouble. The department then stated that in the next term, they'd extend the employment end date without a proportional increase in pay. And of course, I told them that instructors were not going to be happy with this. And I'll never forget the words that came after that, because they told me, yeah, but they're not unionized, so what are they going to do? They're not unionized, so what are they going to do? And I'll never forget those words, because those words, for me, solidified that it isn't just these rich CEOs and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk's now who exploit their workers. No, it's happening right here in the university sector. It's happening in the academic sector, with precarious work being their golden goose. It means that they can pay you whatever they want, however long they want, without any pushback from you or anyone else, and they continue to profit off of your labor while you struggle to stay afloat. With the union involved, the university employer has someone to whom they are accountable. They have a watchful eye over them making sure that unionized workers will not be abused by the university. And yes, precarious work continues to exist, but the union provides a safeguard against the blatant disregard for your well-being. And of course, the union cares about your well-being. Why wouldn't they care about your well-being? The unions, again, are you, your colleagues, your coworkers. Unions are workers coming together and fighting together for what they deserve. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh. Round of applause. So next up, we're going to do one quick last poll here before we move on to Craig's presentation. Just give me 1 second here. So just to get a sense of how people are feeling, Tina talked about, there's all different types of ways to be involved within your union. There's, all different levels, whether it's just dipping your toes in or otherwise. So things like attending membership meetings, training, becoming an executive or committee member, or join the bargaining team. So how do you feel? Do you feel like you want to get involved? Maybe it's not time for you, or maybe you just would like to know a little bit more from us, which we're happy to help and expand your knowledge of your union. So just a few more responses trickling in here. All right. So about half said yes, sign me up, and we'll be taking down your name and number here at the end of the webinar. I'm just kidding. But for those that are unsure, if you're not sure, you think you might want to get involved, but you need to know some more, please do reach out to your local executive. Contact your regional rep. So if you're in Saskatchewan, contact myself. If you're in Manitoba, contact Tina. I'm not sure who's assigned to the different universities out in Ontario and the Atlantic, but sorry, I know Raphael out in the Atlantic. She's, I think, one of the contacts there. But anyway, contact your local regional office, and we will definitely get someone in touch with you where we can help get whatever questions you have answered, and we'd be happy to help out in any way we can. So with that, I will turn it back over to Tina, who is going to introduce Craig.
Thanks, Jesse. So just before I introduce Craig, in sort of response to what Ganesh had spoken about, and Joanne spoke about, and I'm sure that Craig will touch upon, I don't know if this has made its way everywhere, as social media does do what it does, but there was a tweet by an associate professor of economics at Texas A&M. And I don't know whether or not this was meant to just sort of like get discussion going, or if this was an actual position that she had, but she tweeted, "If I'm required to pay undergrad RAs $15 an hour, I will definitely hire fewer of them. Silver lining, less paperwork for me." So I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't want to like turn this person into a villain. I don't know whether or not that's an actual position. I didn't, drill down into her Twitter to see whether or not that was the case, or is just intended to, get some discussion going. But I do think that ties into this particular sector in general. So just food for thought. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce Craig Bergold. He is the elected academic representative for the Ontario Regional Council and former president of Local 901. He was president for 5 years, representing more than 2,000 academic workers at Queen's, which is in Kingston. So recently, Craig was elected to the TA, TF, and RA Bargaining Committee. So take it away, Craig.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Great. Well, first, I'd like to thank all the presenters, the technicians, the staff for the success of this. My name's Craig. I'm a PhD candidate in cultural studies at Queen's University, and a research assistant now. I'm working as a editor on a series of short videos about basic income. I've also worked as an online teaching assistant and as a teaching fellow for 6 courses on contemporary media and one on the culture of the precarious. So today I'm speaking from the city of Kingston, Ontario, the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse and the Anishinaabe people, the original people. And I pay my respect to the elders of these territories and offer my solidarity. I'm going to share my screen now. I got lots of pictures because that's what I do. Okay, so can everybody see the title?
Yes.
Great, great. So let's start with talking about 2 really important developments that I think are on everybody's mind these days, and what our members do also really care about, and that's the swift wrath of this pandemic and the summer's anti-racist justice movement. I also want to talk about some stories about our members mobilizing for better working conditions in the second part, and how to make our learning conditions in the academic sector better. I want to, okay, how come I'm having trouble moving my PowerPoint. Let's see what's going on. It's locked up. I'm going to stop sharing. And I will try sharing. Let's see what's happening.
I found the same thing, Craig. It wouldn't work with my keyboard, but it would work with my mouse. I don't know if that will help.
Okay. Let me try that again. I'm going to try sharing. Boom. Share. Let's see if this is going to work. Yeah. Okay. So, so I know of 2 brilliant projects that our members in PSAC have been working on during the health crisis. One is at the University of Saskatchewan, and I know some of you are on here, where PSAC postdoctoral researchers began inching their way towards a viable COVID-19 vaccine last year. I like to tell positive stories about what our members actually do on the job because we really make a difference in society. We contribute to our communities, and we take pride in our work. And you know, like Ganesh is saying, if you're a precarious postdoctoral researcher and you're developing a vaccine that's going to save the world, that doesn't seem right. It seems like you should be paid better for the work that you're doing. So at the outbreak of the coronavirus last year, the team of top scientists provided their lab work. They pivoted from their normal work to jump right in and try to decode the mysteries of this disease. The other project is at Queen's University that I know of, where students and faculty took up the challenge to design a low-cost and easy-to-manufacture ventilator. So I thought these were really impressive projects considering the moment we're in. Many of our members are also here in Kingston, have been involved in the campaign for paid sick days. When the Conservative government got elected a couple years ago, there was, I think, 2 or 3 paid sick days on the books, and they actually took them away through legislation as employment standard. So no doubt the pandemic has exposed so many inequalities in our society, and many frontline essential workers, especially at long-term care homes and grocery store clerks, they're called heroes today, but they're still paid low wages. And many do not have paid sick days. I don't know what the provincial legislation is in. So in the prairies, but here in Ontario, we have 0 paid sick days through the employment standards. So precarious employment is a health issue that affects all of us, not just the union members, but the children, our grandparents, everybody. If we get sick at work, then we are taking that back to our community. So fairness means paid sick days. And this is a big campaign in Ontario right now. Also over the summer, you know, there is no economic justice without racial justice. John A. Macdonald is the founding Prime Minister of Canada, and he was responsible for the residential schools. We know today that Black Lives Matter has made anti-racism a majoritarian issue. People are on our side. And we see as the majority are moving against these racist policies, we are seeing a rise of white nationalism on our TVs just a couple of weeks ago in the US, and we're hearing more and more of it on social media. So I think there's a greater recognition today that Canada's settler colonial history, we know now the stories about Indigenous children being taken from their families and put into residential schools. And we also know that Indigenous people are disproportionately incarcerated in Canada, and we need criminal justice reform. So this takes us back to what our members are doing at Queen's. So a memorable moment last year was, I wasn't so much involved in the campaign, but many of our members were involved in a campaign to dename the Sir John A. Macdonald Hall. And this campaign was led by Indigenous members. They actually wrote a paper, the local commissioned a paper to be written about renaming it in honor of an Indigenous, the first Indigenous lawyer that had graduated there at the school. And this campaign was victorious. We don't know what the new name is going to be, but the administration has said they're going to remove the name. So I want to tell you some other stories of member mobilization campaigns. Right now in Ontario, the provincial government, the Conservative provincial government, a couple years ago, 2 years ago, imposed a wage freeze of 1% on all public sector workers. So anytime we go to the table now, we're kind of hemmed in by that. And at the same time, they cut student grants. We call them OSAP grants here. So I love the creativity of the signs. This was kind of a coalition between the undergrads and the union. And we went out, you know, concerned and taking our message out onto the streets. Some of these are great. My third job paid for this sign. I'm missing a mandatory class so I can afford to attend in the future. We have a large international student caucus at our local. They participated, no to poverty, no to student debt, no to the austerity agenda. And this one's brilliant. I want to expand my mind, not my debt. So I want to tell you the story about our first contract for research assistants at Queen's University. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the innovative tactics and creative communication strategies that we've used to inspire greater member participation. This is the bargaining team that was elected by the members, and we're just going over the survey and trying to get all the demands together to give them a priority, and then take those back to the membership to be voted on. And at that time, the employer was saying, we don't have any money. I mean, they always say that when you get to the table, we have no money. And so we set up, this is before COVID, obviously, we set up these cupcake tables, we called them. So if you filled out a postcard, this was the front of the postcard, and Union Rock Stars, And so people came to the table, they filled it out, they got a cupcake, and then they wrote a message on the back, and we mailed these to the principal's office. I think there was about 600 that got mailed with messages of solidarity for our bargaining campaign for a first contract for research assistants. And we also produced a comic book talking about precarious research assistants. And we tried to make it as humorous and as engaging as possible. On the right, it says, this research assistant in debt subsidizes her food bill by stealthily sneaking scrumptious snacks at snazzy Queen's events. Some RAs are paid $14.50 an hour. And then the other cartoon character, superhero Precarious, is collecting data on the principal's vanity project, developing a better toothpaste for a winning smile. A part-time research assistant wonders if ramen noodles for the third time today is really a good idea. And says, I wonder if my prof can hire an RA to clean up after the undergrads I supervise. So we gave these comic books out as a way to engage the members and have a discussion with them about what our campaign was about. So cupcake for your thoughts. And then we would take the members' photographs, and then we would ask them if we could tweet them for our social media campaign. So we would send out every day, we would send out a series of tweets about our campaign. So I'm just kind of walking you through the different mobilization that we were doing. And the cartoon, one of the key things that we always try to do with, especially like PI and postdocs or research assistants and their faculty supervisors, is we try to build unity between the PI and the postdocs and say that the issue is with the administration, the employer, because the employer, the administration of these universities has the capacity to give more to the PI and to give more to the faculty supervisors that you often are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And these PIs and these faculty, as you know, have great influence in your career. So we want to make sure that that solidarity between the faculty union and the teaching assistant union is together, and we work towards calling out the administration. So superhero Precarious, after an epic 5-year battle for a first contract, we were eventually able to raise about 20% of the members' wages from $14.50 an hour to $42 an hour. So wages, setting a pattern for the wages was really one of the key elements in that first contract. So I want to talk about another campaign now. I think all good campaigns start with a barbecue, actually. I saw that in Joanne's postdoc campaign, she had barbecue. So we do we've always done an annual event of barbecue. Postdocs are very, very busy, often working, especially the STEM postdocs in the labs. Having a free meal is a way to get them out and meet each other and socialize, which is a really important part, especially because for the precarious postdocs, they tend not to know all of the other postdocs in the university because everybody's working far apart in different labs or different departments. So this is a way to bring people together. And one of the big issues that came out of the survey was, I think 50% of the postdocs had children, had young children. So this little was kind of like a card that we would, as a postcard, and we put our demands, try to make our demands as simple as possible for people to read. And We also then asked professors and PIs and people to put up signs throughout the campus in support of the campaign. Just a simple, we love postdocs, while we were in bargaining. And I'm pretty sure anybody who's been an academic worker knows about ramen noodles. Like, this is pretty much, if you're precarious and you're running short on your food bill, this is a kind of a common thing to eat. So one of the things that we came up with was a lot of postdocs were worried about exposure in the campaign. So we came up with this idea with the bargaining committee to have members, similar like the postcard, but have members write a message to the principal on the noodles directly with the sticker. So this member wrote, "I hear about your financial situation," because of course they claim they have no money. "I wish I could help, but I only have $1,200 a month left over after I pay for daycare. Am I a bad parent for feeding my kids ramen noodles, or are you a bad employer for keeping me precarious?" I love this one. "When noodles speak truth to power, it's time to give us a raise." Humor goes a long way to get members engaged. Ramen, better than a hunger strike. And so we took all the noodle packages that were with all of the messages, we put them in a box, and then we had a surprise event where we delivered them to the principal's office. And by the way, we called the media too. So we arranged for the media to be there. And we used it as a way to involve the members in a campaign where they could, their individual personal messages could be heard, but we also found a symbol that represented our precarity, what we were eating. And we also had rallies on campus. And we took the noodle and we then turned it into our brand for the campaign. So dinner for scholars. And we actually culture jammed it from Mr. Noodles to Dr. Noodles. And that brand was kind of our, throughout the campaign, we would make the posters and put them up throughout the campus while we were in bargaining. And we took the messaging to our MP. It's something I strongly recommend for any bargaining committee, is to get members to go meet with their MPs and tell them the message, especially for postdocs, because a lot of postdoc funding is federal funding as opposed to graduate work, which is provincially funded usually. And then we use that event to as part of our social media campaign, and we let the not only the members at PSAC know what was going on, but we let Queens know. So our hashtags and our who we were tweeting to is like, "Hey Queens, we're talking to our MPs." So we eventually got a strike vote from the members, and I'm just pulling up my notes here. So with this strong strike mandate, 92%, I think that when you have creative tactics, when you find engaging ways to involve the membership, and people see their stories in the media, they feel like you're there to support them and they want to join to do the best that they can. So in 2017, for the first time in Canadian history, local 901 scholars, postdoc scholars, won a collective agreement with childcare benefits of $2,000 per child annually, basically setting the standard, a new standard in the sector. An overwhelming majority supported this demand because it was an equity issue for them. And the membership's strong strike mandate sent a clear message to the employer that childcare benefits are important, and we are willing to take job action to gain this right. The economic constraints that postdocs face with minimum salaries of 35, or if you're on an NSERC, you might be up to 42,000, but you're a young family, these economic constraints should not become a factor in the decision to have children versus pursuing your research career. At the time, Celia Fragtag was the postdoctoral vice president, and she said, postdocs at Queen's gain childcare benefits on par with those available for faculty. This achievement will help relieve the high cost of quality childcare. I just want to play you one. So we did these radio ads. I think it cost us about $2,000. And we got to play over a 2-week period over the Christmas break, about 300 plays of this ad that we wrote and composed. So let's see if we can get this. Whoops, sorry.
This message is brought to you by Public Service Alliance of Canada Local 901, representing postdoctoral scholars who teach and do research at Queen's University.
Every postdoc down in Qville likes research a lot, but the Grinches at Qville appear to not. Because their paychecks are 2 sizes too small, they're standing together demanding equity for all.
Queen's University is the second largest employers in Kingston. Be a leader. Pay all postdocs a living wage.
So that radio ad seemed to catch their attention because we had taken our issues off the campus into the community. Now everybody's talking about it. It was at Christmas that there was a break in negotiations, and we had been in negotiations for 1.5 years. When we came back from Christmas, after those radio ads ran, there was a different attitude, and we were able to get 3 of our major demands for postdocs: raising the minimum salary, the childcare benefits. We also got them access to doctors, because it's very hard to get a family doctor in Kingston. So that's something that the local was really pleased with. And since then, I think UT now has childcare benefits, and I'm hoping all the postdocs at PSAC will eventually have these childcare benefits too. So we made these little buttons, hug a postdoc. We had a celebration. But it all started with that barbecue, the barbecue. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was amazing. And so now I invite, if you haven't already done so, I would invite you to please put your question in the question box or the chat box. I do see that there is one question in the chat box, but I'm going to turn this over to Caroline to read out the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And I had also seen the question. Here we are. And this is from Badad Saeed. And I'm wondering perhaps if we can unmute Badad, and perhaps he can ask his question. And so Jesse, I think you might have that ability to unmute.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And if you can, if you wouldn't mind asking your question, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you all for your presentation. It was very nice. And I'm at least more familiar with Psac and what you have done for us, even without knowing about them. And my question is about my concern about the university tuition. Last year, before pandemic, I was the first year PhD student, and we have a presentation from one of the faculty members in engineering building, and they talked about increasing the tuition, that basically it was more than expectations, because they said they are gonna double the tuition till next coming 5 years. But this year, because of the pandemic, they paused their plan. but I'm not sure how they are gonna increase it in next 4 coming years. But it's too much for the students. And the reason then when we ask why you have such a plan, they said we are gonna improve the university ranking. I mean, the University of Saskatchewan. So honestly, this reason does not make sense, at least for me in my field, because the field of water resources engineering ranked first in North America in the University of Saskatchewan. So I think we have the best rank. So it doesn't mean we are going to improve it. And I'm wondering if you please let us know that Psac can bargain with the university staff about this issue, because it's not like just for a special like group of students. It's for the all graduate students in the university. If yes, we would appreciate it. If no, you might suggest some way that we might follow up to. Maybe we can like deal with a better situation, or they might change their decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Joanne, I
Joanne,
suspect Joanne probably.
I do. Thanks for that. I do. I can tell you a little bit about what we've done so far. So the short answer is PSAC and 40,004 local, we can't directly negotiate tuition fees for students because it's not a graduate student workers issue, it's a graduate students issue. But what we have done is offer our support to the Graduate Students Association, who can and have made efforts to challenge this decision. And so what we've done, we supported and attended a rally that the GSA held to try to stop these tuition fees from being signed by the board, the university board of directors. And we also sent a letter to the board, the university board, trying to tell them what a terrible, terrible idea this is, and what a huge burden it would place on our graduate students. Obviously on our graduate student workers who are our members, but of course on all graduate students. Jesse, is there anything else I should add?
Yeah, so we were poised to host rallies. We had a very big rally planned leading up to the vote on this the proposal to increase tuition, and I recognize, reading through your question, that it was the increases for international students was just astronomical, and unbearable for some people, that they were potentially being forced to leave the campus. So we were poised to host a massive rally. We have a communications officer that works in Winnipeg. She had drafted up all kinds of posters and leaflets for leading up to this event. We were reaching out to media outlets, and we were ready to be in everyone's face, kind of drawing on the community support to support the GSA and their attempt to fight back on these tuition increases. The university wanted to use this rationale, saying, well, we want to be in line, the median tuition with the U15 universities, which was quite funny, because when it came to bargaining, we used that line and said, okay, well, let's bring the wages then up to the median of the U15 universities. And they said, well, no, we don't want to look at those. We'll look at 3 universities in Western Canada and compare those ones. Well, 2 out of the 3, whatever, weren't even unionized. So it was quite a big joke. But we can't directly do anything about tuition, but we can look at it in the fact that basically every penny that we're bargaining for our members at the bargaining table, they're taking out of everyone's pockets through tuition. So it doesn't better anyone's situation. And we can offer the support to the GSA or any other student associations on campus that we represent members there, and hopefully add to the pressure, because we do have that larger network. For example, we have we have, of course, our local campus at the U of S, but we also have federal departments all surrounding the University of Saskatchewan. So if we're hosting a noon hour rally, we can get everybody to come over on their lunch break, and all of a sudden our group of couple hundred people turns into 500 people. And so, that's kind of what we can do to help try and put the pressure on the university to back off on these initiatives.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your help.
So I don't see any questions or any further questions in the chat, but perhaps a question for those who have just become new PSAC members might be, and I think the question might be applicable to any three of our panelists. In order to make the most out of the union member experience, what would you suggest a new member does first? Or perhaps what is the first thing that you tell a new member when you meet them?
Read your collective agreement.
He stole the answer right out of me.
Sorry. I was already unmuted.
Oh yeah, I think that I'd agree with that. Read the collective agreement, or just give them a bullet points if they're talking to you, just a bullet point of like what is really big, or if when the next AGM annual general meeting is, something like that, just to get them going and getting familiar with the executives and the other people that are on their in their the word sector unit.
Craig, did you wish to chime in?
One thing that happened at 9:00, because the question was about international student issues, right? So is that correct? So yeah, there's this whole thing of like, when you sit down at the employer's table, they're going, well, that's a student issue. You're here to deal with workers' issues. And they make up this big thing. So there are, I think 901, what they did is the last year that I was president, an international student caucus was formed with all the international students meeting on a regular basis. And what eventually happened was they provided the impetus for the graduate student union to have to do something, because the graduate student union should be, because we're both, right? We're both in the graduate student union and we're in the workers union. So our members formed that caucus, International Student Caucus, and then they went over and pushed the student union to go deal with that issue. But it doesn't mean that it can't be a union issue. It just means you might not be able to negotiate it at the table. So you can still mobilize, just like we mobilized to change the name of Sir John A. Macdonald. Once you're part of a campus coalition, you can do anything.
Yeah, really well said.
That's the thing. Yeah, there was a few during our bargaining session. There was a few different unions that kept getting brought up when we started asking for certain things. They would say, like Craig said, that's a student issue, not a workers issue, or that's a different unit that you're kind of talking about now, and we have to stick to these. And they'll try, at least as far as I can see, they'll try to split the solidarity up. They'll put one union against another union, and they'll try and make some infighting to make you kind of break down like that. But we know their tricks. So it's the coalition is really important. If everyone just kind of sticks together, we're all on the same page here. We're all workers. We're all students.
And on that wonderful solidarity end note, what a great way to move it back to Jesse and to Tina. And I'd like to thank all three panelists. Absolutely wonderful and really informative. So thank you very much. And the only plug that I would put in as your regional education officer is please look to your website, the PSAC website, the regional website, and look to the upcoming education opportunities that will be in February and March and so on. Thank you.
I also want to echo what Caroline said. So thank you so much to our presenters. This exceeded my expectations 1,000 times over. And I'm so grateful to the three of you for presenting your stories tonight. I think that that's fabulous. I was going to ask Marianne to join, but I'm actually, if Marianne's okay with it, I just want to present the last slide and then she can close off our session for us. And the last slide in particular, just give me 1 second. I apologize.
Yeah, my face can be the last slide. I'm all right with it. We can do that.
Oh, this. I just wanted to highlight the links here, specifically, about PSAC, Prairie Region, national website. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, all the participants tonight are going to receive an automatic email, and in that automatic email back will be the links. So one of the things that I don't think we spent a lot of time on, but PSAC has a scholarship program, and that is important to workers in this sector. And if you haven't signed your member card and want to, we have an E option there as well. And last but not least, the Education for All, the link is there. This is a Twitter link because this is a last minute thing and I did not have the one from the website. But you can sign up for the Zoom webinar that is at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow to hear how PSAC has signed on to that coalition. So again, thank you so much. And I am going to turn it over to Marianne for closing comments.
Perfect.
Oh, Jesse, did you have anything else you wanted to say before? Okay, sorry.
No, just thanks everyone for attending. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your stories. It's fantastic to hear. Oh, sorry, did I go on mute? No, sorry. It's fantastic to hear your stories and how everyone's experience has been a little bit different. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you to the presenters. I mean, I've spent some time with Joanne. I think, Ganesh, I may have met you somewhere, and Craig, of course, being from Ontario, we haven't crossed paths, but it really truly is a sector, and the reason that we have put resources and energy into it is, we don't need to go and raid other unionized workers to build our union, because we honestly believe that there are workers out there who deserve a union. And I believed it before, but I had just started in this position when we were approached by members in Saskatoon. And as you were talking about your experiences, it suddenly put me back in the boardroom at the PSAC office in Saskatoon with members saying to me, Laura was one of them, Joanne, saying to me why they wanted a union and their working conditions. And it was, it was so compelling because they were invested in it too. And I think this is the one thing that as a union, we not only have reps like Jesse and Tina to assist, but we make a place in our union for members to actually participate. Our members are on the bargaining team. Our members are giving direction to a professional negotiator who knows all the legalities, but it's based on issues that our members are having in the workplace. And just, the question about the international tuition, I just, that was part of it, because another piece of being a union is we can't just be concerned about our little bubble. So we have forged relationships with all of the unions on every campus where we have members. So I know at the U of S, there's a committee that meets at the faculty club. And, if one union such as CUPE was having their pensions attacked, we were at that rally. We had our flags there. We spoke at that rally. And when we were talking about tuition, they said the same thing. They were there for us. So that's really what it means. And, I think you all inspired me on that. I know for a lot of you, your students, your workers, your mothers, your fathers, your parents, you're dealing with elder care, you've got all kinds of life. And it's a really huge decision to make a commitment to take a position in the union. The more hands we have, the more evenly the work is spread out. And the one thing I got from the presentations is that it's absolutely personally fulfilling. So I'm sure, Joanne remembers that moment when you go, oh my God, we just negotiated our first collective agreement ever. Or when Craig, look at our wages, we went from this to this, we did this, I did this. So I really would encourage you to think about how you can make that work. If it's something you're interested in, please contact Tina, contact Jesse. And the other thing that's come up before is you're going to get a lot of skills in the union, either through our education program. Just think about it, sitting at a negotiating table, watching our professional negotiators and research officers negotiating with the employer. You are building your negotiation skills, you are building your own research skills. So it really is an opportunity to build your own skill set. And so there's a lot of benefits. And I just want to thank everyone for spending time with us tonight. And please feel free to contact Jesse, Tina. I'm all over the website. Contact me anytime. And by the way, I wasn't kidding. If anyone has contacts in Alberta universities, in any units that might fit in, please let us know. So thank you all, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Thank you,
night.
Marianne. Thank you.